So I did watch the entire interview that Donald Trump did on CBS 60 Minutes. The full version is on YouTube if you want to check it out for yourself. He talked for 73 minutes, I believe it was, but the version that made it to television was heavily edited, and only 28 minutes of it made it to TV. Now, what's ironic about that is that Donald Trump sued CBS because they edited the Kamala Harris interview. And he went so far as to claim, that their editing of her interview was election interference, even though he won the election. He tried to say that that was election interference, and they ended up settling and paying Donald Trump $16 million in one of the most ridiculous lawsuits and most bogus lawsuits that was ever filed. But when they did that, when they bent the knee to him and kissed the ring, what that did was solidify everything he said. And to his flock, they were like, see there, CBS did wrong. And to people who are apolitical, it just sort of sits back and watches from a distance. They looked over and said, well, they must have done something wrong if they're paying up. And I want to talk about this interview because I do believe that it's everything that's wrong with American mainstream media. Now, I'm not going to be able to play any of the clips from it because CBS is pretty strict with their content, and they would hit us with copyrights if we tried to play them here on YouTube. So lucky for you, you're not going to have to hear his voice during this video. I just want to talk about the whole thing as a whole. I did watch the entire interview, and I can tell you that just a few minutes into it, my head was already hurting. Because I have never seen someone just sit there and lie unchecked. Just sit there and lie and bullshit unchecked for 73 minutes. He never stopped bullshitting. And they love to talk about, Trump derangement syndrome, and they accuse all of us of having that. Buddy, Joe Biden is rent-free in Donald Trump's head, and he never stops talking about him. And no matter what question he got asked, he always found a way to circle it back around and find a way to blame it on Joe Biden and talk about how Joe Biden was the worst president in American history and how he was the greatest and how this has been the greatest 9 months in American history. And I'm sitting there listening to it, and I'm saying to myself, I understand that this guy's delusional, and I understand that this guy's demented, and I understand that this guy is declining rapidly right in front of our faces. But how in the hell does this man still have an audience? How in the hell do people still latch on to the things he says and believes it? Well, part of the reason they hang on to it and believe it is because he never gets checked on anything. And if he does, they allow him to just snap back at them and lie and just keep pushing forward. And it's one of the most humiliating interviews that I've ever seen, both on his part and the host that sit there and ask the questions, because she never pushed back. And if she did at all, if she even came close to, he just pushed her right back in line and made the interview go the way he wanted it to go. And yeah, if you want to go watch the whole thing and be the judge of it for yourself, go ahead. But you're probably going to need a beer afterwards or during it because it was a really stressful interview. It was a hard one for me to try to get through. Of course, they edited out the part where he bragged about suing CBS and pretty much just laughed in their face that he got his way, and they bent the knee to him, and they were pretty much afraid of him. It was so disgusting. And then one part that I do want to focus on just for a second is he actually said, they started talking about the ceasefire, and the host said something to the nature of like, well, that didn't hold. And he said, oh no, it's holding. Yeah, it's holding, it's working. And I'm like, no, it's not. In no world is it. And then the host said, you got back the remaining hostages. And he said, actually, I got all of the hostages. And there was no pushback whatsoever. He was just allowed to say that out loud. And we all know that Joe Biden himself got hostages back. I think it was, 138? Don't quote me on that. It's like 138. And part of the deal that Joe Biden made was in 2024, and he was told that they would come in January and February of 2025. And so Trump tried to not only take credit for those, but for all of them that Joe Biden got back. And people just sit there and let him say it. So my honest opinion on the whole thing, when it comes right down to it, is that Donald Trump and the mainstream media are in bed together, and they're playing us all. That is the way I feel about it. I feel like we're watching old school WWE or old school NWA back in the day. I used to be a big fan of that, and I used to love to watch the Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes feud. That's the first feud I ever remember watching on wrestling. Years later, when I grew up and got to understand the whole thing and got to hear them talk about it, I learned how good friends they were behind the scenes. And they would sit there and come up with all these storyline ideas. Hey, you have the Four Horsemen attack me, and then I'll have the Rock and Roll Express run in, and they'll clear the ring, and then we'll have a big match next week, and everybody will come pay to see it. And they laughed their way all the way to the bank with that one. And I really do believe that that's what we're seeing with Donald Trump and the mainstream media. He calls them fake news, and he pretends like they're his enemy. And then everybody out there portrays this image of like, oh, well, the media's going after Trump. They're hard on Trump. They pick on Trump. They never pick on Trump. They never push back. They never fact check him. They never make him explain himself. They allow him to sit there and lie right to the American people, and he goes unchecked when he does. But he sits there and demonizes them and calls them fake news. And in turn, they realize, hey, you know what? This guy is ratings. The more we talk about this guy, the more people's going to watch our network. We can have him on our show. The people's going to watch our network because the guy, love him or hate him, is ratings. And he himself said that if you get the ratings, then you've got it. That's all you really have to get. And you got to understand that Donald Trump looks at this whole thing as a brand. And you also got to understand that he actually is a WWE Hall of Famer. He learned from them. He learned how to go about storytelling. He learned how to go about working angles, and that's what he's doing. So CBS didn't lose any money by paying up. They are all in it together, and they're all working the crowd together. And that's my takeaway from the entire interview is I just sat there and I went, yeah, this is Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes right here. This is, and that's kind of an insult to Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, but I'm just saying that this is one of those moments where we're being played. We're being worked by him and CBS. And I wouldn't wipe my nose on an article from CBS, and I wouldn't watch them. The only reason I watched that is because it's one of those things I had everyone sending me the interview saying, Brando, what do you think about this? And of course, you know, this is one of those moments in time because it was such a disastrous interview. You really can't let it go by that you don't talk about it. And so we had to talk about it. But it was one of the most cringeworthy things that I've ever seen in that 73 minutes of my life that I'll never get back. I wouldn't recommend anybody watch it, but you can form your own opinions of it if you watch it yourself. I don't know what the hell was going on with his forehead. I've not really heard anyone talk about this, but I don't know if he's starting to grow horns or what the hell's going on here. But if you really sit and watch it, his forehead just keeps getting more and more intense. By the time it gets to like the 46-minute mark on the full video on YouTube, by the time it gets around the 46-minute mark, it looks as though he's just fixing to spout horns. So I don't know what's up with that. But this dude is truly demented. And when I say that, I don't even mean it from a standpoint of he's a dementia patient. I mean he is a pure fucking demon. He truly is. And the way that he sits there and talks and the anger that he gets, this is the thing. If you really watch it, as long as they just sit there and let him talk about how great he is, he's okay. They don't ever throw a curveball at him or a hard ball at all. He gets none of that. He gets nothing but softball thrown the entire time. But if it's even slightly confrontational, you can see that ridge in his forehead, whatever the hell's going on there, you can see it get more intense. You can see him get so mad. And every time he talks about Joe Biden, you can almost see venom shooting out of his lips because he is just that deranged. He truly is. And so, yeah, I mean, I would not waste my time with the mainstream media. And, you know, I have turned so many people in my family and friends on to independent media and networks that will cover it and tell the truth about it. And I've had people come back and thank me later and be like, Brando, thank you for turning me on to Midas Touch, because now I can sit here and listen to somebody call it like it is, and it's not a bunch of BS, you know. You can't watch that stuff and take it seriously. It's like, you know, I use WWE references all the time, but it's really more like the National Enquirer that's now on the screen, or like those old rag papers you used to walk by when you was a kid. I remember there used to be this black and white paper back when I was a kid, and it would say, you know, you'd walk by it and it would say alien, you know, gives birth to a human being, or it would say man falls out of a plane and bounces twice and lives to tell about it, or man survives the electric chair, or whatever. And you used to just see that stuff and no one, I mean, I don't remember anybody buying them. You just looked at them and kind of laughed at them as you walked by them. But now that's mainstream. And that's the President of the United States. And he can go out there and say anything he wants to, send his cronies out there to say anything they want to say, and it goes completely unchecked by the mainstream media. Why? Because they're working the audience. They're absolutely working the audience and playing us all. And I know that may sound like I'm a conspiracy theorist, but you go watch the interview and you be the judge for yourself. And tell me when it's over if you didn't feel like you were being played the entire time.